Brr.
This is Dr. Christopher Endrinal, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
Las Vegas does big shit, and they say, "Hey, if you want to do big shit, you come here and you
Yes.
see if you can get big enough." Along the strip, Dean Martin Street,
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra Street, people fly in and they think Vegas, like it's as big as it gets. In 2023, the Sphere showed up, Formula One showed up, U2 showed up, and they all hit the mark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than U2. They're literally the biggest band in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Biggest band ever now. I mean, like they just hit a new gear in these last 2 years where they just said, look, if you thought we were done, we are far from done.
Well, I mean, in terms of commercial success, I think, U2, if they're not singular, then they are in extremely elite company. Like it's Beatles and
Right.
Stones and U2 in terms of commercial success, but also critical acclaim and enduring fandom. I mean, I read this somewhere and I love this point. This is by Hank Bordowitz, and this was he wrote this 15 or 20 years ago. He said U2 now, and this is again 15, 20 years ago, U2 has been good longer than any band ever. And
Right.
it's the same four guys. And they're still doing it. I mean, we're coming up on what is it? 50 years? 50
Yeah.
years, right? 2026 is going to be 50 years of U2. No one's done that. And no one's done that as consistently as U2. They have number one hits in 4 different decades. The only artist to have a number one album in 4 different decades. I mean, and they possibly could have a number one with the rumored next album coming out, So U2 is, if they're not singular, then they are in rarefied air for sure.
And this isn't that anybody else isn't great. We're talking like when you scope in on greatness and you start to rub greatness against greatness. This is like one of my arguments when people are like, John Bonham's the greatest rock drummer. No, he's not. You don't die at 32 and get to be the greatest against all of the greatest. Neil Peart still had echelons of greatness to climb up and through.
Right.
John Bonham was incredible and highly influential and changed a lot of things and was important. But he wasn't a pro drummer because pro drummers can survive their afflictions and their addictions and can get through and evolve. So there's gates to greatness when you're measuring greats against greats, alphas and alphas.
Right. The one exception I might think of would be Hendrix, because I mean, he died at 27, but already by 27 he was already Jimi Hendrix. Right. And so, of course, we can only speculate like what we would have had he lived another 27 years or even more. But, I think longevity is definitely one of the measures of greatness. Yeah. And I mean, U2 has been doing it as long as anybody. And again, with the same 4 guys. And what's remarkable is, U2 has undergone lots of self-imposed reinventions. And they're still here. Like we're still talking about them. Like what rock group in your 60s is getting attention on the internet besides U2? Now, granted, some people are giving them attention for things that I don't think they necessarily deserve attention for, like that whole iTunes debacle. But they're in it. They're relevant. They are part of the zeitgeist, and so that's important, and that means something. I think when we're talking about greatness.
It does. One of the things that when I bring this argument up is that people will say, just because you're around a long time, and I'll throw Erasure at this. Erasure is incredible, and they're fun, and I love Erasure, but they don't have that level of greatness that they're getting to over and over again. Their songs are wonderful, but at some point their catalog kind of loses me, and it's all great, but I don't know the words to all those songs because they don't evolve, right? It's still great dance music, everything else. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this Picasso-esque evolution, and I'm going to be in this era and this era, and they're forcing us to evolve with them as they do.
Yeah, and it speaks to just how clever the members of U2 are and how cognizant they are of of rock and of music and how music changes, and that, you know, that
Right.
U2 has not been stagnant. And, you know, there's a significant portion of the fan base that wishes that they still sounded like they did on War. But if they did, we wouldn't be talking about them in 2024, because they'd have fizzled out by 1990. But,
Yeah.
you know, they hit it ultra super mega hyper big with Joshua Tree. And then what did they do? They turned everything on its head. You know, like, who does that? That takes balls. And not only did they do it, but they did it with an album like Octung Baby that let them go to Sphere and was like, you know what, let's revisit this album like we did Joshua Tree, and it was amazing.
Yeah, when you drive through that Joshua Tree Desert on the way to Vegas or wherever else you go through it, because there's a couple of ways, it changes that experience.
Yeah.
It does. It informs it, and not many bands have that. Like, I call it, U2 is one of those bands that's driving music, and you put on that album or another album, or, you know, they're good at filling just the Southwest, like the Unforgettable Fire, and just drive. And it's amazing that they have that soundtracking capability to fill something. And there's a lot of bands that have that, but it's sort of one of these things where you can just say, I'm going to put U2 on, and for the next 200 miles, or however many miles, I guess if you're going for 45 minutes, it's not 200 miles, but, you know, you've got a soundtrack for your next part of your journey.
Oh yeah. You know, well, and U2's been around long enough, and their catalog is extensive enough that U2 has a song for just about any occasion, any mood, any activity. Yeah, which is awesome. I've been running, and I only recently just started running with U2 in my ears, and it's been awesome because it allows me to explore U2's music from a slightly different perspective. You know, because when you're running, you're thinking about different things, right? And so and you're hearing different things. So yeah, it's been interesting to explore U2 from that perspective as well.
One of the things U2 does, and I'm going to reach up here to my bookshelf. One of the things they do too, they don't fear media, and so probably the best book performance ever is in this book.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it won Grammys or not. I don't know if they even bothered to nominate themselves for it. But this book, the book is great because Bono is great with words. So great job as an author, but also just the performance in it. This is not a small endeavor. The production that's in that book, it's world class. I mean, so when they venture into something, it's not like, oh, we're gonna have a ghostwriter write, you know, 100,000 words and then we'll see you later. Like, that's a real piece of art right there.
Yeah, and that's another thing about U2 is they're willing to put themselves out there. They are willing to take chances, and they are willing to fall, right? And fail, like, you know, with like pop, with the pop album, and with the Songs of Innocence launch, and actually with Apple's whole partnership with U2's whole partnership with Apple. I don't think a lot of people realize that U2 has taken $0 and 0 cents from Apple. Like, throughout their career, U2's contract with Apple has just been for publicity. They have taken $0 because they know that Apple's marketing prowess will help them sell albums and help them get people to the concerts. They don't need to sign a $50 million contract with Apple because they're going to make that money. And they don't need Apple for the money. They need Apple for the word of mouth. You know, like the on old iPods, that outline of when you went to tap artists, that was Bono's silhouette from the Live in Chicago DVD, right? And he's been part of the Apple ecosystem since that black and red iPod. So and again, that contract was for $0, people. You know, like who does that, right? That's brilliant. That's brilliant on U2's side of things.
It's a little bit precious when people get mad at U2 for jamming an album onto their iPhone, and they still have an iPhone, but they're not in any way mad at Apple, who are the ones who secure the rights to the album, use their software to put it on their phone, and they have a laptop for it. They're not mad at Apple, and I don't know how Apple got away with that, but that is actually what happened. This is a business partnership. U2's like, use our album. Here's the rights to the album for whatever value they exchange there, and then, you know, Apple does this as well. So look, I'm not saying U2 is not responsible. It's their business deal with Apple, but Apple kind of dodges that bullet.
Apple did their Apple thing, you know, which that's why that's part of the reason why Apple is Apple. But I think it was a brilliant was a brilliant partnership on both sides, right? Like Apple got a lot of attention, and actually Apple hardly got any of the negative attention because all the negative press went to U2 and to Bono, who's that's so low hanging fruit. Like, come on, guys, like Bono bashing that's so 2001. Like who like and someone hands you a piece of art. Okay, if you don't like it, guess what you can do with it? Not press play. Oh, okay. And there you go. Now the whole like, oh, you violated my rights. Come on, it's an album, people. It's an album. You don't like it? Don't press play. Who cares?
By the way, the back catalog sales went through the roof when they did that.
Yes.
By the way. So
see, that's why they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and also, by the way, when you get old enough and your dad passes, there's a whole how to deal with this guide in those albums from 2001.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's hilarious.
I mean, I listened to Sometimes You Can Make It on Your Own a bunch last summer after my mother died, because it was it's about dealing with grief and dealing with a tough relationship with a parent. Yeah, and that Songs of Innocence version, the Songs of Surrender version were just bawling. Just
And Kite is another one of those songs.
Man, Kite's one of the great funeral songs. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's and we're kind of setting this whole thing up because I want to get into the sphere, but I just want to lay some of this groundwork because we can talk about U2 for a long time and they stay in the news. It's like when people talk about the death of X or Twitter. And it's like, we're talking about this company. We're talking about it all the time. We don't talk about Snapchat. Snapchat's got to take out an ad in the Super Bowl, to stay relevant. And U2 is the same way. Last year, U2 flew its big giant marble into the Super Bowl ads, and we were all like, "What in the hell is this thing going to be?"
Yeah.
And now it delivered. And I went to 2 Sphere shows, and I can't. It's hard to describe. Someone said, "Oh, it's like a giant IMAX."
No.
If you haven't been, that's a good guess.
Right. If you haven't been, that's probably the closest comparison. But Sphere is a game changer, and I know lots of people have written it, but unless you've seen it, both on the outside and on the inside, you don't really understand just how much of a game changer this venue is. First and foremost, because it is a venue made for concerts, right? So like Innocence and Experience Tour and Experience and Innocence, those were arenas, and like music sounds like garbage in a hockey arena. Music sounds like trash in a football stadium because those are sports stadiums. Sphere it's meant for a show like this. And so the visual clarity, the audio clarity, and the integration of the visuals with the music is on a scale unlike anything before it. And yes, it's IMAX because it's so encompassing, but the fact that it goes above you, right? And you get these sensations of motion and of immersion in a way unlike anything else I've ever seen. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it had to be Vegas where this thing jumped out. And I don't know what other act should have debuted. So I'm not saying there aren't acts, but it has to be a band. If you bring a small show, and I'm just going to pick on Great White, if Great White comes with their cold pyrotechnics and the standard pony trot across the stage as they triumphantly play their guitar, that ain't going to cut it.
Nope, it won't. The Sphere's space, because it extends upward, right? Not just to the sides and not just front and back, but there's the Z-axis, right? It goes up. And if you play Sphere, you have to have on point visuals and not just recreation, not just projections of the band, because like you can see that anywhere. Like you have to have a set of visuals created for this space. So that means that artists who perform in Sphere, they have to have the entire thing worked out. The German word for that is Gesamtkunstwerk. It means total artwork, right? And it's what Wagner did, right? Wagner's operas were music and acting and costumes and sets and dialogue and production. The whole thing. It wasn't just singing, right? So when you perform in Sphere, you can't just have a set of music. You have to have a set of music that works with what's behind you and above you. And you have to think about it. Like, you can't just be like, yeah, let's play Sphere next week. Like, you have to have designers, this is not the first time that U2 has worked with S. Devlin, and you can tell because all those visuals, I mean, they are so on point. Not just for the timing, but what's represented on the screen. Those aren't random, and U2 is not a band that does random things. So everything is very carefully planned. And I think that's one of the things that Sphere changes, is that it's going to change how artists plan and develop their shows.
You also have to be big, because you're playing. It's like I always like to talk about like the pipe organ and a symphony, and how a pipe organ can just like do, 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 do. It can tear you apart. It's so big and powerful. So if you don't get big enough for the Sphere will swallow your show whole, because you don't exist.
Yeah, which that it's like you said. I'm sure there are other acts out there, but I can't imagine another act opening this venue because of U2's history with large scale performance, right? And it goes all the way back to even before Zoo TV, because their Joshua Tree tour transitioned. It started in arenas and then it expanded to stadiums, right? So U2 on the fly, on the road, on the fly, I get it, had to learn how to play to a bigger audience. I mean, in real time, that's crazy. And then, of course, with Zoo TV, and then Pop Mart, right? And then with 360 and with Joshua Tree, right? Like, it's like the scale keeps getting bigger and bigger. I think U2 was and of course I'm biased, but I mean, trying to think as objectively as possible, I think U2 was the perfect act to open up, to debut this venue.
It's I'm so glad you brought The Fly up, because The Fly has become so much more than just a song from Achtung Baby. It has become this thing. I mean, and look, Bono is not afraid to grow a song into what it is, but the Sphere is The Fly. I don't know what is. I think I told you this before you went in. Like, be prepared to not know what's real.
Yeah.
And you look at things and you're like, I don't know if those concrete walls were actually ever there. You know, I mean, it's so crazy.
Those graphics during The Fly, right, with the rainbow colored digits and numerals, they started climbing, and then when that ceiling seemed like, I was like, I know it's not coming down, but like I was like, what? Because just the sensation, right? Because it's so big and it's so immersive. We were walking into the venue, and we had seats on the first elevated section, right? And so our row was row 16. So I was actually afraid that we would be stuck under the overhang. But we got there, and our seats were they were perfect. Like, the overhang was not above us, so I could see straight to the top. And oh my God, like, during The Fly, and the visuals during Even Better Than the Real Thing, it was a tribute to Elvis, and with the visual, it looked and felt like the stage was elevating. Like, it was floating, and I was like, "Oh my God!"
There's that first. I don't know if you looked up, but at the Oculus, there's an opening. And for everybody looking, you look up, and you're like, "Oh, I can see outside," which makes sense because it's beautiful. And you're in over the flight path, so things can fly. Kind of like at SoFi Stadium in LA, you can see things. And so right before the show starts, a helicopter flies over, and you're like,
"Yeah,
is that a real helicopter?" And you kind of don't know.
No, and when during I think it was Atomic City, right? It started with the background of Vegas, and then Vegas was deconstructed to the desert. That was amazing. That was
so
because it felt like, I was like, are we actually looking at a live feed of the Strip? Because like that, like that looks like it's right outside. I mean, the visual clarity was outstanding, and the audio clarity, actually, because they have 170,000 speakers in that thing. That was one of the most stunning aspects of Sphere, was just how clear the audio was.
I'm going to come back to the audio. Let's stick with the 16K video. And also, and I remember I told you, like, make sure you look up and back, because there's stuff, like, it is like you do this a whole lot in there, because there's just so much screen that it does like, and again, as the band, you have to perform for that, and there's haptics in the seat. And so you are filling a lot of space. You are using a lot of senses because people have to physically move to see a lot of these things.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed from the first show to the second show is they're learning how to drive this thing. And there is some in some of these upper deck seats, it's like being on the upper deck of any big football stadium.
Right.
You think that's got to be terrifying up there because it is
Yeah.
hyper steep. But they're putting, just for anybody watching, they're putting 20,000 people in a stack straight up.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
amazing the capacity, but yeah, that upper deck is raked. I mean, it is steep.
right. And so when you think about that, I think they've had to learn how to like tone down some of the images, and that will be like how these artists have to figure out how to work it. Because the second show I saw had a lot less imagery, and U2 had played with the set a little bit. Because when I saw the first version of it, it was like side one, different little mini set, side two.
Okay.
And there was more stuff. They took a lot of the images out and let the sphere kind of take a break for a minute. I think for folks, and I'm assuming, and this is what I've read online, is that because of motion for people and their responses to it, because it is so all encompassing. And I think they're still going to have to figure that part of it out. But I don't know if you experienced any of that motion, because like when they do the, that when the stage starts to kind of float like that.
Oh,
what
man.
are your thoughts?
It was, I don't get motion sickness really. But my wife did not come with me to Vegas because she was afraid of getting motion sickness from all that. And I can absolutely see that, especially in the third and fourth decks, right? Like the higher you are, it's steep, but you have actually higher seats might actually even be better because you get to see all of the visuals, including the roof. But there are visuals that are on and in the stage that when you're close to the stage, you don't get, right? And so the upper seats kind of rewards folks for like, all right, we know you're not that close, but you get to see everything. I can absolutely understand and see how people would get motion sickness sitting in those upper seats because it's that crystal clear and that immersive. Like that's the thing. It's like people are like, oh yeah, it's like IMAX. No, bro, it's not. It's like VR without strapping all the crap on your face.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. Someone said it's going to be like the Oculus thing, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's I had to. There's one part where they're doing like the flashing lights in your face, and you can see like the structure of the light rig.
Yeah.
And how the wiring goes. That's not actually there. Just everybody knows. And so they've animated into the display like how they wired the flashing lights that are coming back at you. And I'm like, I know that that's not there, but the fly has tricked me again. Yeah. I know that. It's so crazy.
Yeah. Calling the sphere a manifestation of the fly, that's a really good analogy. I never thought of it that way, but it's perfect, right? It's because the fly represents U2's foray into new tech, right? And U2's darker side with the whole vocal processing. And there's a lot of fuzz and distortion on Edge's guitar, and Adam is rumbling. And it's exactly what Sphere is. It's like, you know what? You think you know, but you don't until you see the show.
Yeah, and the show cracks that way, right? And I got this great image early on because the second time I saw it, I'm like, all right, I'm going to be ready this time. And I didn't use my phone really at all. Actually, I had to tell a funny story. This is great. So I went to go see this Cirque show called Il Cortero. Okay. So it's at the Microsoft Theater in LA. And it's just like this, crazy, weird, standard circus thing that they do. Wonderful stuff. And they had this little person. And she was attached to 6 giant balloons. These balloons are probably 7 feet across. And so she's just buoyant enough that she kind of floats. And I'm looking, I'm like, oh, they're going to kick her into the audience. Oh, and I promised myself I wasn't going to pull my phone out. And we're like 8 rows back. But by the way, thanks to Vetix, who give us tickets for these kind of things all the time. And so we had these really choice seats.
Awesome.
And so the ringmaster kicks this little person out. But I'm talking little person. I'm talking like a tiny, not a dwarf, but a very like a little person version of a little person, right? Okay. Like a child, but in adult form. So he kicks her out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's coming right to my friend Pete, not me. Right. And so he's 3 people over, and she goes, "Can you help me out?" And then so she comes down like a beach ball would into the audience, and I'm like, oh my god, I should just grab my phone right now and video. I did not.
Good
and
for
then
you.
yeah. bunk, he bunks her back up in the air and behind him like he's supposed to, and sends her on this beach ball journey around the audience, and then they eventually bunk her back over onto the stage.
Yeah.
I did turn and pull my phone up. I'm like, I can't explain this as well as I can video. So in this case, I am going to pull, and so I take a video just so you can get the sense of like this person, because it's so impossible. Like you need the visual. And so I say to my special someone as we walk towards the sphere, I say, I don't care what happens. I am not pulling my phone out. I'm here for you too. I'm going to enjoy the show. They're going to handle all of this. They're the pros. I don't care if they attach a woman to balloons in the theater and float her around that fucking place. I ain't pulling my phone out.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Edge's wife is attached to balloons in the middle of the show and floating around. I was like, how did that happen?
I had the same.
It happened.
I had the same perspective. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to use my phone as little as possible. And so, like, I took probably a dozen photos. Right? It was like a photo of like a key moment in a song, and then I put it away. I didn't take any video. I went with a friend of mine actually, whom I've known since graduate school, and he was the first person that I met who actively hated U2. Like he hated you. And he is like a really super close friend of mine. And like my students are so confused about that. You're like, you're friends with him? I'm like, yeah, he's a super close friend of mine. And he hates Bono. And they're like, how does that work? I was like, well, we're a model that you can disagree about something and still get along just fine. But he has softened since graduate school. So he went with me to the show and he was like, I don't know how you put on a better show than that. Like he's like almost a convert now, but he was the one who got video for me. And like, the moment in With or Without You where the digital sphere is turning and then we go into the arc. Yeah. Like I have that moment on video and you can hear me next to him saying, oh my God, as I do. But like, I showed that video to my students and I've showed that to my wife and I'm like, this is a decent video, but it doesn't give you at all the kind of feeling that you got, because you felt like when you're there, it felt like you were flying right into that arc. And then it just opens up to those animals. You're like, oh my, I mean, is there a more U2 thing than that? No, that was it. It was amazing.
Yeah. It brought us back into the sphere. Yeah. It's amazing. When the show starts, they deconstruct the wall that's behind them, which again tells you like, is that wall even really there? And I got this great, because again, I kind of knew like some key moments I wanted to capture, and I've got this guy with his hand up, like he's at the altar and he's praying to this God, and I'm like, oh, it's so perfect, But yeah, you can grab these, and I got just a couple really cool images. I didn't take a lot of pictures, but just the the flags and just these really great. Their artistry is always, it's just always, they don't set limits on themselves, and they've got people they trust, and they just make such great choices. And that it's not a medley, but that finale that they put together, because the show for me, the second time through, kind of dragged because they had turned the sphere down, know, and they really backed off on the images as they try to learn how to drive this thing. And who knows why? Maybe that was just because they brought in some different songs and they didn't have the images for that. And who knows, right? Whatever. But I'm like, oh man, the sphere is like it's drunk and they're letting it have like a hangover or something. And so it wasn't there. But when that finale came, and I'm like, no, that's special. That whole deconstruction of the strip, the so water.
Good. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With the water and the whole streets and With or Without You and Beautiful Day. I mean, great way to cap it off. And it's a nice contrast to, because Octung Baby is a dark album, right? It explores dark themes. It sounds rough and dark. And so to end it that way is very U2. But, at the show I was at, I know it was very clear when the band played songs from Octung Baby that weren't the radio hits. Like I sensed a dip in energy during Ultraviolet and So Cruel and Acrobat. And I was like, my God, like these songs are like, they don't play these songs often. This is why you should get up, people. But I could tell that a lot of the crowd was there because they know the big hits and weren't there. But I loved hearing songs like So Cruel live. Like I'm Yeah, I'm in the process of writing my book. I was granted a sabbatical starting in the fall, and I've got a full year
Oh,
off
good.
of classroom teaching. So I'm going to write this book. And one of the songs that I've struggled with ever since I first heard it was "So Cruel," because I don't fully understand it yet. Like I get it, but I don't get the whole thing, right? Because it's it's a song about the tough end or the end of a tough relationship and people not being nice to each other, but it's in a major key. And is he talking about himself or the other person? And so to hear it live, right, like live versions of these studio songs bring out things that we don't hear in the studio versions, right? And so to hear live versions of that one and Acrobat, and Acrobat, fans have been clamoring for U2 to play Acrobat forever. And so when they finally busted it out on 360, and like to see and to hear Edge like shredding that solo at the end of Acrobat is amazing. And I'm like, why are you people sitting down? Get up, but
Please.
It was very noticeable when the show took a little dip. But it was also noticeable when the fans recognized something like the Vertigo gets a lot of flack from the diehards, from the U2 diehards, because they're like, oh, it's just Vertigo. But man, you being in the house when Bono starts counting down Vertigo, like the place explodes. So whether you like that song or not, what it does to an audience, oh man. I mean, it exploded. Like the whole thing was just like, oh shit, here we go. And this was 2 hours into the set.
Yeah. And by the way, any U2 fans should notice a pattern. Every album has a Vertigo, Desire, Vertigo. Like they all have that song because you have to have that song on every album. That's what you do, And so it has a job. and sometimes it's going to be better than other songs. But yeah, like every tour needs that song from that album. And that's just, it's got its place. So Cruel is, I think, one of those songs where, and who knows why, but it doesn't resonate with the band. And I don't understand why. It's great. There is a turn in there that they do miss. This is me going to be, I'm like, hey, Bono, if I ever see him, I'll tell him, like, this is what you missed in So Cruel. At the end, he has to add, we were so cruel. Because that's what an older dude says.
Right.
He's like, yeah. Like you have to put it back on yourself because we did this,
He actually did that at the show I was at. The last song that the last line that he sang was "Baby, I'm so cruel," and I was like,
there you go.
Oh, okay. See,
yeah.
That's different, and that is what we get from live. Now, speaking from my perspective, professional music theorist, I am a studio album guy, and I know that's blasphemy in the U2 world because whose bread and butter is live. But the studio versions for me are the crystallized versions, right? Those are like the official versions, and so those are the ones I always go to first. But I do appreciate the new stuff that live performances gives us. So when Bono changes the lyrics, we have to pay attention to when he changes them because he doesn't change them on a whim. Like he writes the original lyrics on purpose, right? Those are very what's the word I'm looking for? Everything was done with a purpose, with intent. So when he changes those lyrics, there's intent as well there too. So we have to think about that further. And I love that.
He has shaped his word gate out so big. He just knows words and they just flow into ideas. Oh my gosh. I want to press pause on you too for a second and ask you this, because I had this conversation on X the other day about the Grammys when Tracy Chapman was playing Fast Car. And I'm referring to her because it's her song, and I know she played a duet. But folks were complaining that people who think it's a love song, I'm like, obviously this is a love song. There's love throughout this thing, and there's all these emotions that are in it. It's just Pete's point of view. I want you to give me your point of view. If you don't have one, that's fine. But we're talking about a mom who can't stand the dad anymore, and she has to leave. Like there's love in that. Love doesn't have to be comfortable, and then the daughter ultimately has to leave the dad. And then she takes the chance with this dude, and the dude never even gets to speak. But if you just take a line out of a song, you're missing that song passes time. And then what I see in that song is Tracy remembers one more time why they left and what they did and that leap that they made. And then she gives that dude a choice. And it's the one time she changes the pronoun from we, where she's directing action, and to him, and she gives him a choice. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this whole thing is a love song, and it has all these emotions and all this pain. And this is a lady who writes. She's a folk singer, and of the
Sure.
first order. She writes all of her music is about folk stuff, and it's not gentle. She's not making commercially successful choices. She's
No,
making hard choices,
that's a great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when she has something that works for her, the biggest thing is like, fucking awesome. Good job, Tracy. Way to like do your thing. It's great. And then have this lightning strike of a brilliant song. Don't ever limit a genius and tell her what her song means. There's so many emotions in this song. And it's all like, there's all kinds of love in there. If you think that there's any limit to that stuff, but that's just what I think. But I don't know. When you hear Fast Car, do you think it's about an alcoholic dude? Do you think it's about generational porn and poverty? What do you think that song is about?
Oh man. Uh God. I mean, first of all, I do love that song. That song debuted when I was, still growing up. So it's been with me. Like I've known that song in its original form. So when my students come in singing it, but they're riffing the Combs version, I'm like,
right.
Okay, it for me it loses a little bit of power when he sings it, because it was originally sung from her perspective. She is a black queer folk singer, and that perspective is unique. And so to change the perspective is a big thing, right? And so when her perspective in that song, I think you can interpret it from a multitude of perspectives, which is one of the things, which is one of the characteristics of that song that makes it so wonderful. Is it a love song? Yeah, but it's also about, struggling with wanting to get out, but not really wanting, like knowing you should get out, but you're having trouble getting out, which is common, right? That's common for both men and women and those who don't identify as either. It's like I'm stuck in a situation that I know I should leave, but it's hard for me to leave for whatever reason. Because
and there's kids involved.
Yeah, right. Like there are so many tentacles that are preventing the situation from changing, right? And I love the fact that it's the first country song written by a black artist. That's number one. That's wonderful, right? Like that this whole changing mindset. Fast Car is. It's a wonderful song, and I love that she's getting credit for it. Finally, more credit. She's always gotten credit, but she's like getting the widespread acclaim. It is 30 years overdue, and it's a shame that it took all of this time. But I am glad that that she's finally getting recognition for this, and hopefully the rest of her catalog.
I worked at Tower when it came out.
Oh man.
See, you get it. When I say that now, like young folks, they're like, "So what?" And I'm like, "Well, this
Tower
is
Records,
why,
baby.
So
Sam Goody, yes, the brick and mortar record stores."
Oh my God. And it meant something because, we had to know about this stuff as we had to figure it out. And you look and you're like, yeah, that's not some chick that dates dudes. Like you can look and see and you can hear the words, but there's more in this song. And so you were forced to deal with that song and you couldn't just look up lyrics like you can now. And you had to sit with it. And you had dudes that played music and they're like, no, understand. You hear that one tone in there? She's doing this with the capo. And you're like, what does that mean? And then they would explain it music theory wise. And you're like, oh. And so like it unlocked things. And so this is like an really early version of stuff that happens on YouTube all the time now. And I'm like, once you unlock the words, now go back and unlock the chords and there's more in there.
Well, how is the song's message? How are the words brought to life in the music? Right. And then how does the music bring life to the, it's a symbiotic relationship, because if it's just the lyrics, you're missing a lot. But if it's just the music, you're missing all that, which is what makes pop music, which is what makes rock and pop music so special, is it's so layered, and when I work in a field where up until just recently, the analysis of pop music was looked down upon because it wasn't this highfalutin art music that only 0.1% of the population can understand. It's like, get the hell out of here with that, right?
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Like there are lyrics that are, it may not be poetry by Goethe, but these words in this order hit something right here.
I didn't want to get too much time. I wanted to ask these young people who thought it was about the dude being an alcoholic, which, by the way, we don't know if he's an alcoholic or not.
Right.
Maybe he just loves this bar, to give a nod to Toby Keith, right? And maybe he needs to grow the fuck up and get home and take care of his kids. But I'm like, have you guys read any Goethe? Do you guys understand like that love can be really fucking hard and uncomfortable? You guys need to get into the text and learn about love a little bit.
Right.
So it's funny that you brought that up, because I was gonna throw that, but I'm like, I'm not gonna do it. Yeah, let's get so anyhow. That's what happens when you read too much. You
can never read too much. You can never read too much. You can only read not enough. You can't read too much.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, so the visuals with the 16K and quite often you're like, that looks real. That looks real as it's moving by. It was just that was mind blowing. The helicopters, the deconstruction of Vegas, the fact that there's casinos that are behind the casinos as they deconstruct them, and you're like, oh my god,
right? Yeah. Oh, I mean, like that whole visual with streets, right? Like being out in the desert, and it's like it blurs the line between fantasy and reality, because clearly, logically, we all know we're inside Sphere, right?
Yeah.
But then when Street starts and that blue sky is there, it's like there's not, like, I can't see pixels, I can't see a border, I can't see anything that logically tells me, oh, I'm not outside, because it was that clear and that immersive and that stunning. I mean, like I thought the visuals for Streets during the Joshua Tree tour, with that black and white screen and it slowly goes down and then you're going along the road, that was crystal clear, because that was the world's largest 8K ultra high def screen at the time. And then Sphere was like, hold my electronic beer, guys,
beep.
Yeah, and then again, it not only goes wide, but it goes up and above you. It's sick, just ridiculous.
And if you look back and up, and it looks like dawn, and I'm like, well, where's the sun? Where's the source of light? Because it's all going in the right direction, but nothing is projecting it, and so it's just there.
Yeah,
you were outside, and it's hard to describe because people don't understand if you haven't seen it. Like, there's not like a spotlight projecting this thing.
Right.
It's just there.
Yeah. It felt like we were in the desert. Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And then as you're dealing with all of that and you're looking around and everybody else is, I also was watching the audience, like, is everybody having a good time? And they were like dancing and I'm like, okay, all right, good. This is working. And because it's interesting to take the time to do that. Because again, I'd seen the show once. It's kind of interesting. Did you take the time to kind of observe at all, or were you fully in the show?
I was mostly in the show, but I did look around during a couple of the slower energy dips, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a slightly older audience, I think, partly because it's in Vegas, and ticket prices aren't exactly, cheap. And U2's audience is an older audience, right? Like that because they've been around for so long. So it's an older audience. So I didn't exactly expect everybody to be like a GA crowd. But during when the crowd was when the crowd recognized the song, or like when it was a big hit, everyone was on their feet. It was they were having a good time. Couple moments that they sat down, but again, it was pretty rip roaring from start to finish, actually. And my buddy Mike, my U2 curmudgeon convert, he was impressed by Bono's stamina. He was like, how do you sing like that for this long? And hardly seemed to break a sweat, and he was also like, that edge works really hard. I'm like, yeah, he does. Hardest working man in rock right there. Right. It was cool to like kind of break for a second, just to look around, just to see like, what is this visual doing to that part of the crowd? What is the floor? How are they reacting? Because GA experience is different from the seats. But it was awesome. Like, I think most of the crowd was in awe, most of the time because we were
Yeah.
like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes a while to process some of the things too, because you haven't seen or experienced that the deconstruction of the desert and that. And so when I talk about like U2 is the size of band to fill it up artistically, it I can't imagine the cost of the artistic design. The dude with the mouse who's placing each
Oh,
snake on the I mean, what does it cost to produce the non U2 portion of that show?
oh
And then
God.
how many shows to pay for that? You
Well,
know,
yeah.
now
Well,
granted, they could package that and put it in London, and the guys could practice up all their routines and everything, and go out and do it again if they wanted to.
yeah.
But which is not that's a new thing to be able to go. Oh yeah, we'll just break out the projectors and go. But
Right.
it's got to be enormously expensive to put that movie together.
Sure. Well, and it those visuals weren't designed by Joe Schmoes. Like these
Yeah,
are like S. Devlin is world class designer. Like designer, not just like here's a new product. Like design, like she thinks about the concepts of design, right? She
yeah,
helped design the Innocence and Experience layout with the giant screen bisecting the arena. Like that was her, and so she
beautiful. Yeah,
designed the arc and like so that's I guess a benefit of being as big as U2 because when you're as big as U2 you can work with anybody, which means that the product you put out can be as good as you want it to be, which for U2 it has to be in that upper echelon because well U2 doesn't do anything halfway, but when you're as big as U2 and have been around as long as U2, they can't do it this way. They have to always like they have a standard that they have established and they themselves know that they have to maintain that standard, which is exceptionally difficult, which is why they have these big names designing this stuff. Like the visuals for even better than the real thing, right? I was looking through the program and I was like, oh, there it is, right? Like tribute to Elvis. And if you're not looking carefully, you may just think, oh, it's just marquees, floating and stuff, and you're like, no. This version of this song is about the king, right? And so you look at it, you're like watching each of the things, you're like, oh my God, there's something different in that visual from that visual. All the while it's moving, and you have the sensation of we're floating. What?
yeah,
Right? So
yeah.
it's a multi-sensory experience. And to achieve that on that kind of scale, you need a team of world-class professionals. And they have it.
Did you see? And I looked both times, both shows. Once I realized what was going on, which it takes a minute. But, did you see a Bruno Mars Elvis from Honeymoon in Vegas? Because I did not see one, and he was
Oh, I
playing the night.
didn't, but
I
I
was
wasn't
there.
looking. So
Yeah, because Bubba Hotep was there, the Nicolas Cage Elvis was there. There
yeah,
were a bunch of them, and I'm like,
yeah.
and he easily could have been there, and I might have missed him.
Sure. Well, there
But,
was,
I thought
there
that
was
would
so
have
much
been
to look
clever.
at. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
That'd be a
yeah,
good
yeah,
one.
yeah.
That'd be a good one to spot.
Uh, and again, back to the design, you don't just go with your first draft, with that band because they owe all of us, what we expect. Like, this has got to be the right thing, and so they're going to work through working group style, and Bono is going to be involved in this. Like, what is this going to look like? And it's not like a cost thing. So,
No.
let's come up with some concepts and let's work through it. And then there's someone's going to draw a big ball in the pool, and you're like, yeah, and they're going to. Like, this is a long, hard endeavor.
Sure.
Like this thing doesn't just show up. Someone doesn't just go into PowerPoint and go and a ball. Like
Yeah.
this is
Well, yeah. I mean,
expensive.
You mentioned U2 Super Bowl commercial from last year, right? And they were teasing this. That was a year ago, right? And so they were teasing performances that were still 7 to 8 months down the road, which meant that the planning for this had to start 18 months before that, right? So when they broke ground on Sphere, they had to start that planning because it's at a level of it's at a level of coordination. The audio and the visuals and the staging and everything is at a level of coordination that again you can't just throw it together. You have to think about it, you have to conceptualize it, you have to design it, you have to practice it, and then you have to refine it. And that's all before opening night.
Yeah.
And then once you play it a couple times, then you got to be like, all right, now what's working, what's not, what can we tweak? And YouTube does that all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think people fully understand just how hard that creative process is, both before and during the whole residency, because you have to figure out what's working, keep that going, and you have to tweak things that aren't working as well.
That's right. Yeah. And a limited time, because all of these things kind of arrive boom, at the time when the show starts. So they have, a working copy of whatever the show is going to be leading up. And by the way, the stage that rotates and rotates on top of the rotation. And I was a GA guy both times, so I never really got to see that. I did though, and I wanted to say this at one point, lean over to my other buddy Pete, who was with me at the show, and I said, there aren't really 3 or 4 movie screens on posts in the desert. Even though you think it's just like it looks so real, I'm like, that's not really happening,
Right.
I want to make sure we cover the sound. We got a few minutes to do that now. The sound, I normally wear some kind of hearing protection because my hearing is shot from combat, but I could take it out, and I'm like, oh my god, the sound here is on the floor. The sound was perfect. I could detect no echo right away. I could notice the sound waves were just flat and perfect. Nothing was banging back at me.
Right. Yeah. The sound where I sat was really good. It was very even. I had no problems with the sound. I had a couple of issues with the mixing every now and then. Sometimes I actually heard two guys behind me. They were talking about the mix after the show, and they're like, "Oh, the bass was too loud." I was like, "Get the fuck out!" Adam cannot be loud enough. First of all,
right?
He's the bass. Second of all, it was the guitars that were too loud. The guitars sometimes drowned out Bono's vocals, which, as we know, that takes some doing. So I think the levels of the guitar and the vocals could have been reworked a little bit, but I heard them make mistakes, which was great because that's part of the live performance. And at our show, Adam snapped a bass string like second or third song in. He snapped a string, and my friend Mike was like, "Did you see that?" And then his take came up, and he was back in the song 8 bars later, and I couldn't believe that transition was so smooth. I was like, "Bro, 48 years doing this?"
Yeah, not new. He's not new,
but it shows the level of finesse and the level of control that these guys have over this environment. The sound was amazing. It was flat. It was loud, but I didn't leave the arena with my ears ringing. I usually wear some ear protection too, but I'd forgotten to get it for the show. So I was like, well, let's just see what happens. And it was loud, but it wasn't ear splitting, which again, you go to Raymond James Stadium and it has to be like these, 40-foot speaker high, these 40-foot speaker stacks, because they have to blow that sound 150 yards back in an open air arena. So yeah, it's going to sound like garbage. The Sphere sounded great. The Sphere sounded amazing. And I heard the clarity was amazing. Edge uses his pick, but he plays usually with the flat side, which oftentimes have grippies on it. So he gets a timbre. He gets a gritty timbre. And I heard that. That's sick.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
To hear that live, like I hear that on studio albums, but I have decent headphones and I can play with levels and stuff like that. But to hear that live that's crazy. That's crazy. And Adam was on point. Bono sounded good. Bram, I thought, I got this question a lot from my circle of friends. They're like, "So what about the drummer? How was the drummer?" And I was like, Bram was great. First of all, to be asked to step into Larry Mullen's shoes, like, damn, like to say yes to that gig, you got some balls, Bram. That's, but what I appreciated about his playing was that he didn't try to be Larry, right? Like, his fills were Larry-esque, but it was definitely Bram's lines. There were Larry's lines played by Bram, but Bram didn't try to be Larry.
Right.
Which is great because you can't be Larry because Larry's sound is unique because he kind of plays wrong, right? But Bram put his own little spin on it without making it sound radically different, which I thought was great. Like I thought he did a wonderful job filling in for Larry. I mean, it's an impossible job. It was an impossible task, and I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, and I think he's enjoying it, but he's doing it with respect, knowing that like this isn't his job, And so he's very deferential. He's like, yes, I'm here. Thank you. I appreciate everybody. Okay, I'm gonna go back and do my
right. It's not my gig. I'm just filling in for a second.
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
And very you know, Benelux of him. Like that's kind of how the folks in that part of the world are. They're very like, I've got a job to do. I'm gonna go be really good at it and be
Yeah.
dependable. I'm just gonna go get back to work.
Yeah.
That's very Belgian, Polish, that whole area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not a
they
good.
did a great job.
Let's see. My show was the debut of Adam's mustache. I thought that was like he walked out and I was like, oh, Adam is going full 70s. I love it. It's
Yes.
amazing. Adam was on.
Yeah, he had the mustache at my show too on the 26th. He had the
Oh, did he?
mustache.
Okay, cool. Good,
Yeah,
great. Well, oh yeah.
Either way, it was great. Yeah.
I love it.
I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
does he have a
I loved it.
mustache?
I love Adam's. I'm a bass guy. I love Adam. Adam's my member of the band, and so he just like he has this air of cool, just like chill about him that he's like, oh, that I wish I had. I'm way too high strung for that. So that's I think why I gravitate toward Adam, because he's a little bit of an opposite for me. But he played well, and Bono sounded good. Bono's not getting any younger, and his voice isn't what it used to be. But he, I can't expect him to sound like he's 25 because he's not. He's going on 65. So for as long as he's been doing this, and for as hard as his lines are, I have no complaints, none at all.
Yeah. I mean, he's not as physical as he once was,
right.
Because he's 60. But I think he's every bit still the showman and the front lead, the front guy, and it takes us on the journey. He knows these guys are just such pros. There's just nothing to worry about there. And every time I see Edge live, I think anybody who thinks this guy can't play the guitar is just being an asshole. Because he obviously knows how to smoke the guitar.
Yeah.
Anything he wants to do, he can do. And it's just it's obvious.
Yeah, those who give him flack for not shredding all the time, it's like, well, maybe you don't really understand the guitar, right? Like if your criteria for are you a good guitar player is can you shred? I mean, if that's your only criteria, then you have an incomplete picture, right? Like Edge is a pioneer because of what he sounds like, because his focus is on texture and timbre, right? That's not the focus of every guitar player. Nor should it be, right? Because everybody has their own style. And I think a lot of it, of course, came from the fact that Edge wasn't trained technically. Like he didn't take lessons for years and years and years. He just figured out how to do it. But I mean, he's also a picture of going as far as you can go with limited resources and with a very fertile imagination.
Yeah, and I mean, there's like him and Tom Morello. These are guys that completely reimagined the instrument.
Yeah.
And who's got more new sounds than Edge, like in the last 40 years out of the guitar. Right. Just, that's not a fight anybody wants to get into. And any peer of his isn't going to say that he can't play the guitar.
Right. No one's saying that anymore. It's just, you sound foolish.
And if you want,
if you bring that
he's
up.
got solos and his solos sound like his solos. And I'm always hard on Brian May because he plays the triumphant guitar solo, because a lot of guys do that. And I think Brian May's wonderful, right? But I'd rather hear what Edge does, because what Edge does is truly unique. Brian can get lost in the mix of other guys that play like Brian, and Brian's wonderful, right? He's world class. So, and I don't want to be hard on Brian, because Brian is a fantastic career. The other thing about the Sphere and the size of it and everything is you got to put 20,000 butts in the seats enough times to cover the cost of filling that room, making it worth everybody's while, paying for all the artistic work. And that is also not a gentle endeavor for a band that can't put, 40 shows at the price point. And by the way, just for anybody who complains about the prices, the band deserves to get paid. And if they sell the things for $40 a piece, they're going to get scalped for $600 a piece.
Well, right. Well, and during concerts, right? Like how much of my face value ticket price went to U2 in concerts? Not a whole lot, because that goes to Ticketmaster and Live Nation. It's the merch, folks. That's why merch costs so much money, because Ticketmaster and Universal Records, they're not paying U2. That's the nature of the pop music industry these days. You don't make money from albums. You make money from the merchandise you sell on tours. Now, the cut that U2 got from each show, I heard, was substantial. like it's a 7-figure cut every show.
Yeah.
But, the venue costs 1.3 bill, that's with a B, to build.
Yeah.
And so, MSG Entertainment wants to recoup those expenses. And it's actually, compared to other U2 concert ticket prices, it's right in line, right? So part of it is expensive because it's new and it's in Vegas. But also, that's the nature of it. And it's not fair necessarily, because there are lots of people who want to see this who can't afford that, but that's where we are now, right? Like, if you complain about ticket prices at Sphere, then you got to complain about ticket prices everywhere.
Yeah.
And
if you want to go see Adele, or if you want to go see Kylie Minogue, or if you want to go see Bruno Mars on the Strip, guess what? It's going to be a $2,000 weekend. It just is. That's just, it's not U2. That is what it costs to go to. Look, the night we were there, Bruno Mars, I think Adele, Rod Stewart. I mean, it's this is not a place where, Las Vegas just grabs talent and they go, here you go.
Yeah.
Go crazy, and so yes, they price, if you want to go to Branson, you're still going to spend money in Branson too.
Right.
Maybe you'll get off for half, right?
Yeah.
Half, but you're still going to spend $1,000.
Right. It's like cheap. Yeah, it's like going to Disney World. It's like, all right, the tickets and airfare are one thing, but then when you're at the park, guess what? They're gonna bleed you dry.
Yeah. That's right. It costs those things. So obviously we've got Atomic City, which is coming, which is out, and then there's more music coming. They've been hinting at an album. Any thoughts on what's coming up for us?
Oh man, I am excited because it's been a minute, right? I mean, Songs of Surrender came out last year, but that, as a new release, it was a reimagining, and that kept us at bay for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But we diehards are itching for some new stuff, and so if they are really planning to put an album out by the end of this year, I am champing at the proverbial bit, because I want some new stuff, and new YouTube music helps keep me employed.
I thought song.
I'm super excited about it. When I first heard Atomic City, of course, I was like, that's Debbie Harry, call me. And then, of course, I saw at the end of the lyrics, I was like, writing credit to Deborah Harry. I was like, oh, well then, okay, then they meant to do that. Fine, fantastic, wonderful, great, keep at it. Right? It's perfect single for this time, perfect single for the residency. I thought if they didn't write Atomic City, then City of Blinding Lights would have been perfect for Vegas, right? Like, to play that and to have that. But Atomic City is great. I want some new stuff. I want some new stuff right now, because not that I'm tired of the old stuff, but I've listened to it, and I keep finding something. I keep finding things, but I want some new music, which means also a new album,
and the way
new tour, right?
Yeah, and the way the album industry works is albums don't sell as well as singles do, because that's how the industry kind of works. So we got to have to maybe let them kind of bleed these things out a little bit. But I want a new tour. I want a new album. And by the way, Songs of Surrender was great. Like, it's not something you have to tour, but if they did put together some kind of show, I would go see that. And I thought, I thought Bad was incredible when they redid Bad and made that song better. And they just, I don't want to breeze past Song to Surrender, because that also was in this packet of new art that they put out, and what a bold step, and some really, really fantastic reimaginings of those songs. Just, there's great stuff in there.
Yeah. And
Stories for Boys, that was great.
The new song. Well, I love a lot of what they did on Songs of Surrender, which, now that I'm thinking about it, if they do end up releasing a new album at the end of this year, right, late 2024, Songs of Surrender is actually kind of nice, because it made us rethink about the old stuff, and then you're just gonna be like, here's some new stuff, boom, right? Like, just when we get the old YouTube. I mean, these guys are so commercially savvy; they know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're looking for a model for a band to make money, I guarantee you they've got some Sphere stock as well. They probably took a cut. And that stuff has gone gangbusters in the last month. It's gone up $10 a share, and the Fish, and then Dead and Company, and then whoever's next. There's all these rumors about who's going to be, but someone's going to be in that thing playing it all the time.
I can see Coldplay putting on a really good show in there.
Well, you got to get further away from home than that. You got to do bigger.
I guess I'm.
All right.
I guess I'm
great,
still in
right,
the U2 mold, and so I guess up next after U2 in my ears and in my mind is Coldplay. But I mean,
yeah, right.
oh yeah, there's a whole host of people I think who could put on a good show in there. But again, U2 was the perfect choice to open this venue, like in terms of their history with scale and their history in rock, right? Like, because Vegas is known for the new and the shiny, but also Vegas is also known for what happened a couple of decades ago. And so, U2 with their long history, it was just perfect. I had a wonderful, wonderful time. I wish I could have seen more shows. But I think we say that after every tour. It's like, oh, I wish I could have seen more than that. Always.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a couple acts at you to see what you think. Like, obviously you're gonna say yes to all of them, but bands I think that would do, or acts I think that would do well there. I don't think there's any limit to Lady Gaga's artistic ability. I think she'd do fine in there.
Yeah.
And she's got the tunes. She's got the tunes for sure.
Yeah, and the larger than life persona, right? To command a space like that.
Yeah. I think Bruno Mars could sell tickets to that place as long as he wanted. He could stay there 100 shows if he wanted. He's huge.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah. Again, he's got that onstage charisma that the stage makes the artist small, right? The stage and the screen make the artists look small. So you have to your stage presence has to fill up a lot of space, and he could do it.
Yeah, and then I would say, I don't know how they would do it, but I think the Peppers could handle it because they're a stadium band, right? And so they could find a way to do it, but they're going to need help with the images. Yeah. But those guys are fearless. They've been at it long enough. I mean, that's the things. I think you need that stadium callus built up. So you're like, we know how to make big stuff. And so they would find a way.
Yeah. I think to succeed in Sphere, you should have, as an artist, you should have experience playing in different sizes of concert venues, just so that you get used to the size and scale of the venue. Because really, yes, U2 is huge, but the star of the show is the venue. Like the star of that show was Sphere, right? Because it's unlike anything. So you also, as an artist, have to be able to give the power to the venue. Right? You have to have enough wherewithal to be like, okay, all right, let me put my ego aside for this portion of my ego aside because I have to give room to this thing. Otherwise it won't work as well.
So the one thing I'm wondering is, okay, so you got Fish playing 4 shows, and then you have Dead and Company playing some number of shows, and let's say they stay there for 2 or even 3 months, right? All of a sudden, we're only in July. You gotta they gotta rotate acts through that place, and it becomes a big room to fill. That's the one thing I wonder about is how challenging is that, and how many Spheres could there actually be? Because at least at that scale, right? Maybe you can have smaller rooms, and then you could have other acts, like in London's can be like a 10,000 seater or something. But you really have to. That's a big barn. Maybe you do a package show or something, but that's a big place.
It is. Well, and like we were saying just a few minutes ago, right? Like U2, it's obvious U2 have been planning this for years, not just months, years, right? Because they teased it Super Bowl weekend last year, right? And so it was like, what is this? What is this thing? And so for Fish and Dead and Company or whoever, like, if y'all are just now signing on, you'll have a lot of work to do because if y'all haven't been in there, y'all have a lot of space literally to fill up visually, not to mention orally as well. So, I'm hoping that those bands who have signed on have been planning something like this for a while because they're going to need it.
And then, like, if Beyonce, who's actually doing a stadium tour, if she's going, or Taylor Swift, you're going to have to make it worth their while to get into that room. Because they're like, I know how much it costs me to go on the road. Because it is the one thing is you can show up. There's not 15 semis, with 15 other semis, it might
equipment's
be
there.
worth someone's while to go and back.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a break and just live on top of the Venetian for a while, and and take a break and make some money. So I don't know.
Well, I
We'll
mean,
see how it goes.
I read that YouTube pulls in a cool mill for every performance.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's not a bad gig if you could get it.
It's not bad.
Well,
not
and
bad at all.
for artists who are of that echelon, right? Like that's actually not a big deal for them. But
Right. Yeah.
like you said, it's got to be worth their money. It's got to be worth their while. And to play a show in Sphere takes a different mindset because again, you're not bringing all this equipment with you. You don't need all that equipment with you because all the speakers and all the visuals, it's all there. The stage is already there. So what you got to bring is the full force of your creativity.
Yeah.
Right? In ways that you've never thought of before because you have to fill all of that now.
I wonder if the technical side, like Dallas's job is still the same, right? He's still got to make sure everything plugs in right and do all of that. His job is the same. But when you come in and you plug in the USB cable into the board at the Sphere, is it that simple? Or
I mean, yeah, just like, I'm the computer guy. I just got to make sure my laptop's charged, right? Plug and play. I'm going to be getting a drink. I'll see y'all at the right?
Let me know when to press play. I'll press play whenever you just give me a 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1, go, or 3, 2, 1, push.
Yeah, right? I would imagine that guy's job is a little more involved than pressing play. Yeah. I would hope so because it was again a level of coordination that was, I mean, it was so polished that if it weren't as polished, it would not nearly it wouldn't be nearly as good.
Right.
Like a space like that with those kind of visuals and this kind of band, it has to be. Otherwise, you'd be like, "Oh, I paid all that money for a so-so." No, man, I'm going to pay that money because I want to see A-list. I want to have an A-list experience, and that's exactly what I want. I mean,
yeah, this is not a name drop. It just gives some clarity. So my friend is Jay Moore. His wife is Jeannie Buss. She owns the Lakers. So I was at their house, and Jeannie came home, and I was like, "Oh shoot." Mom came home. I got to get out of here, because me and Jay were hanging out like buddies. And I wanted to make sure I left her with a good feeling because I slightly overstayed what I thought I was going to do. And so I said, "How is that Sphere?" Right. And I know she loves you too. And she was like, "Oh my God." And so she wasn't lady boss. She was like, "Oh my God, U2 fan, Sphere fan." Right. And everybody has been to the Sphere. Everybody has gone and seen this place. And that is, that's not common to have everybody running through. Bryan Adams, when he was out here on the coast playing he went out to see, Daniel Lanois was at the show we were at. When
Billy Idol over the past weekend posted a picture of him. There, I was like, "Oh, nice."
Yeah. It's I mean, that's how big this thing is, and Vegas can handle that, right? Vegas can bring Tom Hanks in through the Tom Hanks door, and Jeannie Buss can get into the Jeannie Buss store, and they don't have to be messed with. And Vegas can handle those kind of things. Right. It's Vegas is a different place. It's different when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Completely unique. Vegas is truly a one of one city. Yeah. It
really is. Well, I don't want to ask you all of the questions and not give you any chance to say anything that really moved you because I've kind of bullied you with all that stuff. But what else do you want to say about the show?
Well, again, the clarity really was the thing that jumped out at me most. Both visual, right, 16K Ultra HD, like the line between fantasy and reality was blurred. The audio clarity was amazing. But even with all of those awesome visuals and high fidelity audio, the music still got me, man. I still cried during one. And at the big moment in With or Without You, the moment in With It, it's like one of the greatest moments in pop music history where Bono just goes off. Like, I was singing at the top of my lungs and I was bawling. And I knew it was coming. And I was like, but this is my happy place. And this is what this song does. And this is what this band does. Right. And so despite all the pyrotechnics, despite all of the high tech in your face stuff, the songs are still there, right? And the songs still had power for me. Octung Baby is my favorite U2 album. It's also my favorite album, period. So to hear the whole thing live was amazing.
Yeah.
I loved it. I don't know what I was expecting, but I knew they would play all the tracks. But then, when I heard them start some of those lesser known tracks, I was like, me as a diehard doing what I do, I'm like, yes, of course I want to hear Streets. Of course I want to hear Beautiful Day, because, right? But to hear Ultraviolet, right? To hear So Cruel, to hear Acrobat, was amazing. Let's see, a couple of, the Stamina. Well, just it was an amazing show. Coordinated, polished. But it still felt like a U2 show, right? Despite all the new gadgets and whiz bangs, it was a U2 show. And if you've ever been to a U2 show, then you know what I'm talking about. It's an experience. And my friend Mike was like, if he's not a convert, then he at least doesn't hate U2 anymore. He said to me in as many words, I get the hype now. I understand it.
We get the hype. Yeah.
So,
if the Sphere Company hasn't thought of this, here's your free advice. They won't invoice you for this, the Sphere. Hire the Killers as the house band. That way, anything happens, anything comes up, just have the prepackaged show. Have that guy put the USB cable in. 3, 2, 1, or 3, 2, 1, play. And then you have like mini U2, and they go out there and they just rock out because they can handle that. And guess what? They're gonna put 20,000 butts in the seats, and they're gonna keep the lights on. And then it's cool to have a Vegas act be the house band for that place. I think that'd be an awesome move.
That'd be cool. Let's see what they do. Let's see what happens at the end of summer, right? Like who else signs on and what they do. Again, U2 has set an incredibly high standard, but you don't get U2 to do this and expect anything less than that.
That's right. All right, man. I'm going to roll these credits. Stand by and I'll say goodbye to you.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down show.
Uh-oh, looks like you're frozen, brother.